if I told you that a sharecropper who couldn't vote until she was 44 years old became one of the most powerful voices in American democracy? What if I told you that when she tried to register the vote, she was fired from her job, kicked off the plantation where she had lived for 18 years, and beaten so badly in jail that she suffered injuries for the rest of her life? And she still kept fighting. This isn't just about voting rights. This is about a woman who looked America eye to eye and asked the question, is this America? Is this the land of the free and the home of the brave? And when America didn't answer, she changed it anyway. Now, before I tell you the story of Fannie Lou Hamer, the woman who was sick and tired of being sick and tired, make sure you hit the subscribe button. We're building a community of truth tellers who refuse to let these heroes be forgotten. Before we dive into the video, I want to share with you some personal questions that were asked of me that's relevant to the video we're going to watch. And the first question was, what does voting mean to me personally? My father taught me a long time ago by saying, anything about you not represented by you is not for you. And some have tried to argue that statement. However, what can't be disputed is the history of America. What my father taught me is that it is important to have Black representation by a Black person who has the interests of Blacks in America in mind. That person should be someone who also cares about all U.S. citizens, but while doing so, making sure that our interests are not ignored, undervalued, or marginalized. A friend I once worked with would often say, it is better to be seated at the table than on the menu. And that is clearly laid out in a Broadway play, Hamilton, when he sings the song, I want to be in the room where it happens. Now, this is not to say that I wouldn't vote for someone who is not Black. That's not what I mean at all. However, the non-Black person would be someone who aligns closest with my shared values, interests, and principles. And that's what voting means to me. And that's why voting is one God-given right that I will not neglect. The next question I was asked was, do I remember when I first heard Fannie Lou Hamer's name? And like many things that I've shared with you that I've learned about Black history, I heard Fannie Lou Hamer's name in the community I grew up in, but I didn't fully understand her story until I attended Tennessee State University, which is a HBCU. The next question was, have I ever had to sacrifice something to stand up for what was right? And the moment that stands out to me the most was when I was in the Army. I was in a meeting with some very high-ranking officials, and a white battalion command sergeant major was lying about our first sergeant, who happened to be Black, and he was absent from the meeting. For those of us who served under the command of the command sergeant major, we knew that he was not a person of character, yet he was in the position of significant authority. What the command sergeant major was saying about the first sergeant was going to have a negative impact on our first sergeant and our company. So I chose to speak out and speak truth to power. In doing so, I was able to clearly reveal the gross inaccuracies of the command sergeant major's accusations. But I knew that the impact was going to affect my upward trajectory in the military, and it did. But I can live with that. Next question was, what does sick and tired of being sick and tired means to me? And in my opinion, when you are sick and tired of being sick or tired, that means you have reached your limit of intolerance, and your responses going forward are actions you're willing to take at all cost. Next question I was asked was, how do I explain the voting rights struggles to my grandchildren? And I'll tell you, for me, I don't think that I've done anything different than many of you and your families have done. However, I can admit that the most positive and interactive feedback that I've gotten from my grandchildren and families came after I started making these videos. My grandchildren, like so many others, watch these videos, and I've come to learn that they are far more inclined to learn from these videos and ask me questions randomly over sitting next to me and having one-on-one conversation. These videos have adapted to a generation who learn on the move. The last question: what would I have risked to vote in 1962 in Mississippi? And personally, I feel any response by me or anyone else is hypothetical. We weren't there. And I'd like to believe that I would be as brave as Miss Fannie Lou Hamer, but the truth is, that's something that's easy to hypothetically answer than it would be to actually live out. Fannie Lou Hamer is remembered as one of the most powerful voices of the American civil rights movement, an organizer, activist, orator, and humanitarian whose influence reverberated far beyond her Mississippi roots. Born into poverty and forged in the crucibles of Jim Crow segregation, Fannie Lou Hamer rose to become a national leader, and her testimony exposed the brutal realities of racism in the South and transformed the fight for voting rights. Her legacy endures as a testament to ordinary people's extraordinary ability to change their country. Fannie Lou Townsend Hamer was born on October the 6th, 1617, in a rural community of Montgomery County, Mississippi, the youngest of 20 children. Now, let that sink in. 20 children. Her parents, Jim and Ella Townsend, were sharecroppers, farm laborers who worked the land owned by white planters in exchange for a portion of the crops. The sharecropping system was designed to keep black families poor and dependent. And like many black Southerners of the time, the Townsends lived in harsh, impoverished conditions. From a young age, Hamer was expected to work in the fields. She began picking cotton at the age of 6, and by the time that she was 13, she was handling the same daily quota as adults. Her childhood revolved around long days in the fields, limited access to education, and constant awareness of racial violence that shaped the Mississippi Delta. Despite these conditions, Hamer developed an early sense of justice and resilience. She attended school through the 6th grade, where she discovered a passion for reading, poetry, and the Bible. Her schooling was often interrupted by demands for farm labor, but she never lost her hunger for knowledge. In 1944, Hamer married Perry Pap Hamer after she divorced her first husband. Perry was another sharecropper on the same plantation where she worked. The couple remained childless, made permanent when Hamer was subject to a forced hysterectomy at a local hospital without her consent in 1961. One of many examples of a racial medical abuse faced by black women in the South. These procedures were tools of white supremacy and called Mississippi appendectomies. The intent was to control the black population and maintain white supremacy through political, social, and economic power. Though devastating, this trauma only strengthened Hamer's resolve to fight the system that oppressed her and her community. Growing up in Mississippi in the early and mid 20th century meant navigating a world in which every aspect of life was controlled by racial segregation. Black people were systematically denied economic mobility, voting rights, adequate education, and basic safety. Lynchings, police brutality, and white supremacist terrorism were constant threats. For the Hamer family, as for millions of other Black families, sharecropping reinforced these inequities. Plantation owners manipulated debts, cheated workers out of their earnings, and used violence or eviction to maintain control. Hamer witnessed these injustices daily. She saw how white landowners manipulated her parents' livestock and how Black children were denied schooling and how hardworking families remained trapped in generational poverty. Yet, despite these injustices, Hamer's early life was also shaped by community, faith, and cultural strength. She was deeply involved in her local church, where she became known for her powerful singing voice. These songs would later become crucial tools of unity and hope during civil rights campaigns. Her life under segregation did not crush her spirit. It only galvanized her determination to fight for change. Hamer's transformation from sharecropper to civil rights leader began in August of 1962 when she attended a meeting organized by the Student Nonviolence Coordinating Committee known as the SNCC. The meeting focused on voting rights, an issue that resonated deeply with Hamer, who had never been allowed to vote. Mississippi was notorious for using literacy tests, poll taxes, intimidation, and violence to prevent Black people from registering. At age 44, Hamer volunteered to attempt voter registration. She traveled with a group of other Black Mississippians to the courthouse, where they were met with threats, hostile officials, and absurd literacy test questions designed to disenfranchise them. Though her attempt was unsuccessful, the act of trying sparked profound consequences. Upon returning to the plantation where she had lived and worked, her landowner confronted her and demanded that she withdraw her attempt to register. Hamer's famous response was, "I didn't go down there to register for you. I went down there to register for myself."
And I addressed him and told him that I didn't try to register for you. I tried to register for myself.
She was immediately fired and forced off the land that had been her home for nearly 2 decades. This retaliation pushed Hamer fully into the civil rights movement. She became the field secretary for the SNCC, traveling throughout Mississippi and encouraging Black citizens to register to vote. Her grassroots organizing relied on personal storytelling, hospitality, and relentless courage. If you're starting to understand the price that people paid just to vote, something that we take for granted today, make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell, because what happened next will break your heart but inspire your soul. Hamer faced violence, threats, and arrests throughout her activism, but nothing compared to what happened to her in June 1963 in Winona, Mississippi. Returning from a voter registration workshop, Hamer and several other activists were arrested at a bus station. In the Winona jail, police officers brutally beat her. They forced other Black prisoners to beat her with blackjacks while officers watched and participated. The beating was so severe that Hamer suffered permanent kidney damage, a blood clot in her left eye, and a limp that stayed with her for the rest of her life. Still, she refused to yield. Still, she kept organizing. Still, she kept singing. Hamer's most influential political work began with the formation of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party, or MFDP, in 1964. The MFDP was created as a racially integrated alternative to Mississippi's all-white Democratic Party, which systemically excluded black voters. That summer, Hamer became the central leader of the MFDP delegation that traveled to the Democratic National Convention in Atlantic City. Their goal was to challenge the seating of the all-white Mississippi delegation and replace them with MFDP representatives. Hamer delivered what became one of the most powerful speeches in American political history. Broadcast nationally, her testimony described the violence, terror, and humiliation she suffered in her fight for voting rights, including the brutal 1963 jailhouse beating. She asked the nation a question that still echoes today. Is this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off the hooks because our lives are threatened daily?
Is this America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, where we have to sleep with our telephones off of the hook because our lives be threatened daily, because we want to live as decent human beings in America? Thank you.
Her emotional testimony moved millions of viewers and exposed the brutal realities of racism in the South. Although the MFDP was not seated at the convention, the Democratic Party offered a compromise that Hamer rejected. The delegation's efforts reshaped the national conversation around voting rights and helped to pave the way for the Voting Rights Act of 1965. After the 1964 DNC, Hamer expanded her activism into areas of economic justice, community development, and anti-poverty work. She recognized that political rights alone could not liberate black communities without economic opportunities. To this end, Hamer founded the Farm Cooperative in 1969, a visionary project that purchased land for black families to farm collectively. The cooperative aimed to reduce poverty, increase food security, and provide economic independence from white landowners. The FFC purchased over 600 acres of land, distributed food to families in need, and helped sharecroppers displaced by plantation mechanisms. Hamer also promoted educational initiatives, including early childhood programs and adult literacy classes. She worked with national organizations and faith-based groups to raise funds for medical care, housing, and community services in Mississippi. Throughout her activism, Hamer emphasized the interconnected struggles of race, classes, gender, and rural poverty, anticipating what later scholars would describe as intersectionality. Hamer's health declined in the 1970s due to complications from the 1963 beatings, diabetes, and cancer. Yet, even as her strength waned, she continued advocating for human rights, voting access, and economic empowerment. She became a symbol of moral clarity, humanity, and resilience, inspiring young activists and grassroots leaders. Fannie Lou Hamer died on March 14, 1977, at the age of 59. She was buried in Ruleville, Mississippi, where her tombstone bears the words she often said, "I am sick and tired of being sick and tired." Fannie Lou Hamer's legacy is profound and enduring. Although she never held elected office or possessed formal political power, she reshaped American democracy through sheer determination, honesty, and moral force. Her impact? 1. Voting rights and national legislation. Her work directly influenced the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. 2. Transformation of grassroots organizing. She pioneered community-based organizing that has become a model for modern movements. 3. Advocacy for economic justice. Her Freedom Farm Cooperative embodied principles of cooperative economics and local empowerment. 4. Intersectional feminist influence. She challenged sexism and brought attention to forced sterilization, healthcare disparities, and poverty. Cultural and moral influence. Her speeches, songs, and personal stories continued to inspire. She was, as many called her, the spirit of the civil rights movement. Fannie Lou Hamer's life story, from beginnings as a daughter of sharecroppers to her emergence as one of the most compelling voices for justice in American history, illustrates the power of courage in the face of systemic oppression. She lived through some of the harshest forms of segregation, survived violence that would have silenced many others, and still she rose to challenge the nation's conscience. Her activism helped reshape voting rights, inspired national awareness of racial injustice, and promoted economic self-determination for Black Americans. Hamer's insistence that ordinary people can make profound change remains a guiding principle for modern movements seeking justice and equality. Fannie Lou Hamer was fired from her job, kicked off her land, and beaten nearly to death in jail, and subject to forced sterilization, all because she wanted to vote, all because she believed that democracy should include everyone. And when America told her no, she asked the entire nation, is this America?
Is this America?
Your children and your grandchildren need to know that the right to vote, the right that we exercise so casually today, cost people like Fannie Lou Hamer everything. She was sick and tired of being sick and tired, but she never stopped fighting. If this story of courage and sacrifice moves you like it moves me every time I tell it, I need you to do something for me right now. First, hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so that you never miss these stories of ordinary people who did extraordinary things. Second, like this video and share it with your family, with your church, and with your community. The next time someone tells you that voting doesn't matter, send them this video. And third, leave a comment and help me teach the next generation. Now, answer these questions so others can learn. Number one, what does the right to vote mean to you personally? Knowing what Fannie Lou Hamer sacrificed, how does it change how you view voting today? Number two, what does sick and tired of being sick and tired mean in your life? What injustice are you tired of seeing, and what are you doing about it? Number three, and final question. Fannie Lou Hamer lost her home, her health, everything just to vote. What would you have risked in 1962 in Mississippi? How do you honor her sacrifice today? All right, one more thing, and this is crucial. Read Until I Am Free by Keisha N. Blaine. Get Fannie Lou Hamer's complete story. Understand her vision for economic justice and see how her work connects to today's struggles. You can find this book in our complete Black History book library at the link in the description and in the pinned comments below. Look, these books preserve our heroes' legacies. Don't just learn their names. Understand their sacrifices, carry their visions forward, and honor their fight. Don't let them reduce Fannie Lou Hamer to a footnote. And don't let them forget that democracy in America exists because of ordinary people like her who refuse to accept anything less. Subscribe, share, comment your answers, and please build your library. I'll see you at the next video where we will uncover another ordinary person who changed the world. Take care.